anti-doping today has created a pretty messy situation, which comes with a certain danger. My prediction with anti-doping, it will continue for another 10, 15 years because of the huge inertia that the machine now has. It's become very big. I mean, WADA, and it's worldwide, and there is so much money behind it. I think the International Olympic Committee and other sports federations have created an image of the perfect human being that is just too much. It's just something that doesn't exist. It's the beauty of the athlete combined with an archetypal perfect behavior. You certainly don't dope. You're kind to everybody. I mean, it's just illusory, and it's very paradoxical. I mean, first of all, we asked from our athletes that they kill all their competitors, and then they have to have this fantastic behavior, if possible, utterly altruistic too. I think it's not healthy. There's something wrong with that, and it's politically very easily sold. And politicians love this type of black and white distinctions, and it makes it much easier to advance the agenda. Is that because of the limits of testing technology and testing density, we can't go much further than with whereabouts rules and things like that. We know the doping continues. The numbers are 1 to 2% adverse findings in WADA over the last 10 years, and there's nothing that is showing any change. And the other thing is that other research in human sciences, for example, using all kinds of sophisticated ways of getting an idea of what the real prevalence is, rather show 7, 8, 9%. What does that mean? It means that it is likely that among the winners on the podium are potentially the best cheaters. Of anti-doping is the celebration of the ideal phenotype and genotype of the human being. And doping doesn't fit in that. And so now we have created a situation where, unfortunately, you're never sure. Even if somebody has been tested 150 times in all kinds of moments of his competition or outside competition life, you can't be sure. Maybe he's just very clever. To hide your behavior from everybody around you. It's not simple, it's very difficult, but and there's good reason to believe this. Yes, from time to time this is probably happening. It means that athletes at the top are really under tremendous double pressure. From one side they know that perhaps the other guy is, maybe cheating a little bit, or you're not sure. Damn, and I want to be there too, and always this question, shall I not, shall I not? It's very, very difficult. And on the other side, of course, the pressure of anti-doping that is also very awful, with the real potential of being accused while you were not doping. A false positive is a real possibility. That one day we'll accuse somebody who is a very good athlete, and among those are perhaps the guys who try to really be on the border and try to escape because they're doing maybe not things really according to the rules, but probably also a few from time to time who are just, badly organized. I mean, think about it. We've come to a situation where we can't exclude that the dopers are still winning, and we even have people that are really trying very hard to play the game according to the rules, who may be accused from behavior which has really nothing to do with doping behavior. By having rules that the majority of the people will obey to, but of course in the margins from time to time people do not keep to the rules. Well, we can live with that. That's okay. That's acceptable. In sports, it becomes a little bit difficult with doping because, as I said, doping has this perverse effect of, it's not the margins where doping happens, it's at the top, and that's what we don't want. A nice example is the Tour de France. There are some interesting analyses being made that show that up to a couple of years ago at least, but perhaps even up to today, certainly also 2006, Landis, and now 2010 with Contador. There has never been a tour where the winner or the runner-ups were not directly or indirectly known to have been doping. In other words, the definition of what is the Tour de France has always comprised doping or doping-like behavior. What we have always liked about the Tour de France always came with doping. So now we're trying to invent something new, which has never existed before. A Tour de France without doping. It's inventing something that has been inexistent before. At the beginning of the Tour de France, I mean, they didn't know much about what to take. They took some strychnine, some alcohol, some caffeine, and stuff like that. But today, of course, the arsenal of possibilities is just sheer, tremendous, endless. But the Tour de France has always adapted to it and to this behavior. It has never become a place where clearly everybody was just falling dead all the time. It auto-regulates the system in a certain way. And of course there was a price to pay. And maybe some athletes have suffered from the consequences of certain type of behavior. But partly that can be explained because it was relegated into hiding. They had to do it in more or less clandestine ways. If they would have been accompanied by specialists that knew what they were doing, and if there would have been from time to time the independent look into the medical status of the athletes, it probably would have been a bit better. So just as an example of a sport, ideally it would be wonderful if we could invent a system where everybody would stick to the rules and a sport would be free of doping. But it's illusory. It doesn't exist because it's humans that do sports, and humans are not perfect. And we try so hard to get there that it comes with a price, and the price becomes very stiff to pay. And our view on things is that it is becoming too expensive. Not in terms of money only, yeah? In general, it becomes too expensive. So we must look for alternatives, even if these alternatives come with consequences. Like, for example, you not choosing to become a professional athlete because you just can't live with the idea of sticking a needle in your arm. Perfectly fine, no problem. But others probably will be willing to do that. It will change dramatically the way sports looks and is organized, and maybe also the people who do the sports. But okay, that's maybe the future.
I could not imagine putting something in my body and then just to be on the same level as the other guy. And then my kid thinks, oh, this is normal. Okay, I'm not a professional athlete, but I do it as well. And then maybe it gets out of control, maybe not, but for me, I cannot imagine that.
First of all, the question of fairness. Sports is by definition unfair. It's actually the celebration of unfairness, where in the end the performance is just a matter of physiology, and if you have a higher hematocrit for whatever genetic reasons, you're the lucky one. And if even more you're born in the right country and you were accompanied by the right parents and the right coaches and were lucky enough to win a few races and you get a sponsor, there you go. It's by definition unfair. The whole argument of level playing field is totally fraud. It is a very strange argument. The celebration of world championships, etc. It's a real celebration of the genetic outliers. It's looking in the distribution of the variation in the human phenotype in how humans look, to those expressions of genetics and in an environment that are the outliers, that are the exceptions. So it's very, very unfair. Whether it becomes more unfair or less unfair by using pharmacology is in a way irrelevant. It's nothing more unfair or less fair than the unfairness to begin with. It's based on empirical knowledge and actually scientific research. It's very unnatural. The shoes you wear, the swimming suit you carry, depending on the temperature of the water you're in. So that's an argument that doesn't really can convince us when we start really to think about these questions. Now, I would never want to stick a needle in myself. That's not my thing. I hate the idea. It's a choice that you made, and it's a choice that you made within a certain framework of resonance, of reasoning. I looked at a little video yesterday. It's the Birdman. It's this crazy guy that uses a wingsuit to jump from mountains. He almost killed himself recently on the Table Mountain in Cape Town. It's very interesting because the reaction of the world is pure admiration. With sometimes people saying, well, this guy's crazy, but it's pure admiration. But the risk he's taking is just tremendous. Well, he chose in pure autonomy, in a calculated way. This is my life. This is what I want to do with it. And so you could very well imagine that people would be choosing again. But think about football or skiing, downhill skiing. Wow. There is not one champion who still has his knee ligaments intact at the end of a career, and it comes with a very heavy price. I mean, they all have arthrosis at a more advanced age, and from time to time a skier dies or goes into coma for weeks. I mean, we had this terrible accident on the Strife 2 years ago now. We accept that, and it says, yeah, well, that's part of the game. That's because of the sports. This sport is that. Sure, but what is now fundamentally the difference between accepting these type of sometimes incredible risks, death, with the risk of taking pharmacological substances?